Hi guys, here is Dr. Benaduce. In this lecture, I will go over fundamental knowledge I need you to have for us to study very important skeletal muscles we have in our body and make sense of why they fall under a specific category, under a specific classification, and why they cause that specific movement when they contract. So let's get started. We have over 650 skeletal muscles in our body. The good news is we are not studying them all, so you don't need to freak out. The main goal is to focus on the skeletal muscles that we are also studying in our lab. The great majority of our skeletal muscles attach to bones, but we also have skeletal muscles that attach to other muscles and to our skin. Now, every single skeletal muscle has several skeletal muscle cells. And we know that every single skeletal muscle cell is basically the length of the skeletal muscle it is making up, and that every single skeletal muscle cell has several nuclei, and they have these striations. And these striations are a consequence of the organized arrangement of the thin and thick filaments that we have inside of each skeletal muscle cell. And when we look inside of each skeletal muscle cell, we see myofibrils. And myofibrils are a sequence of sarcomeres, the muscle units. And when we zoom in into the sarcomeres, we see thick and thin filaments. Thick filaments are composed of the myosin protein, and thin filaments are composed of actin protein, and also those regulatory proteins, remember, which are called troponin and tropomyosin. Now, this is within a skeletal muscle cell. I just drew one myofibril with myofilaments inside it. And as the name says, myofilaments are the filaments, which makes you recall that the filaments are the thin filaments and the thick filaments. And when we look inside a skeletal muscle cell, we see several myofibrils, which again are composed of the thin and thick filaments. Now, for a muscle cell to contract, we need lots of energy. So for sure, inside of every single skeletal muscle cell, we will find several mitochondria, which are organelles involved with ATP production. Now, for mitochondria to produce ATP, mitochondria needs glucose and oxygen. And the protein that stores oxygen within a muscle cell is called myoglobin. Myo making a reference to muscle. And myoglobin is red pigmented. Now, let's think about this. A muscle that is a high endurance muscle, such as the muscle that we would find in the chicken leg, uses more ATP. It uses more energy because that muscle that the chicken is using to run around is a high endurance muscle. So it needs lots of energy. And in order to produce energy, in order to produce ATP, that muscle needs lots of oxygen. So in a high endurance muscle, we would find lots of myoglobin, which is the protein that stores oxygen within a muscle cell, correct? Yes. Have you noticed that the meat that you have in a chicken leg is darker than the chicken breast meat? Yes, guys. And the reason for that is the amount of myoglobin that was present in the chicken leg needed to be much higher than the amount of myoglobin present in the chicken breast. And myoglobin is red pigmented. And with that in mind, you can easily remember that a high endurance muscle will have darker color than a muscle that's not high endurance. And the reason for that is the high amount of myoglobin, the red pigmented protein that stores oxygen within a muscle cell, the oxygen that is necessary for the mitochondria to produce ATP. Now, let's go back to our skeletal muscle cell drawing. Here we have a piece of a single skeletal muscle cell. And when we look at a skeletal muscle, we see several skeletal muscle cells like this. And we also see that surrounding every single skeletal muscle cell and filling up the gaps between every single skeletal muscle cells, we have connective tissue. And this connective tissue found hugging every single skeletal muscle cell and in between skeletal muscle cells is called endomysium. Now, all these skeletal muscle cells are wrapped together in a group. And this wrapping is another connective tissue layer that wraps all these cells together in a fascicle. And this connective tissue that wraps all the skeletal muscle cells together in a fascicle is called perimysium. Now, this is a single fascicle in a skeletal muscle. And when we look at a skeletal muscle, what we see is several fascicles. And all these fascicles are wrapped by perimysium. And all these fascicles are wrapped together by another connective tissue layer called epimysium. So what we see in a skeletal muscle is not a bunch of skeletal muscle cells together. What we see is groups of skeletal muscle cells wrapped in connective tissue. Now, when we covered connective tissue, I told you that one of the characteristics of connective tissue was that connective tissue is highly vascularized. With the exception of cartilage, all connective tissue has lots of blood vessels, is highly vascularized. And we are seeing here connective tissue wrapping around groups of skeletal muscle cells or single skeletal muscle cells. So what you can expect is that in this wrapping of connective tissue, we will find blood vessels. We will find blood vessels carrying oxygen and nutrients to nourish these skeletal muscle cells. And we will find blood vessels that will remove waste products from the skeletal muscle cells. And besides blood vessels, can you guess what we can also see in this wrapping of connective tissue? We see nerve fibers. We see sensory neurons, nerve fibers, that will be there to detect what's going on in the skeletal muscle. For example, is that skeletal muscle overstretching? And we also see motor neurons, nerve fibers, that will be there to deliver the signal that will trigger the skeletal muscle cell contraction. So we have the endomysium wrapping around every single skeletal muscle cell. That's easy to remember because the root endo means within. So the endomysium is the most inside one. Then we have the perimysium at the periphery of the fascicle, which is a group of skeletal muscle cells. And the epimysium is the most outside layer we have wrapping around a skeletal muscle. And that's very easy to remember because epi makes a reference to the epidermis, which is the most outside layer in our skin. So the epimysium is the most outside layer in the skeletal muscle. And what we see when a skeletal muscle is attaching to a bone is that the epimysium, the perimysium, and the endomysium, they all merge and they become this connective tissue tube that we call tendon. And this connective tissue that is the fusion of the epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium coming from the muscle fuses with the periosteum of the bone. So we have the connective tissue of the skeletal muscle merging, fusing with the connective tissue that is surrounding the bone. And this arrangement is essential for the function of the musculoskeletal system. Because every single time we are moving our body around, we are contracting a skeletal muscle that's pulling on a bone in our skeleton. And since this attachment of the muscle with the bone is based on the fusion of the connective tissue that we have in the muscle with the fusion of the connective tissue that's surrounding the bone, this attachment is extremely strong and very hard to be pulled apart. And that's why we can lift weights and our muscles don't just detach from the bones they were attaching to. Now, we know that there are people that can lift lots of weight, right? And if we think about bodybuilders, which are people that can lift lots of weight, we can clearly see that bodybuilders have very large skeletal muscles. Now, I told you before that skeletal muscle cells cannot undergo cell division after we are born. And my question is, how are those skeletal muscles in bodybuilders so big if skeletal muscle cells cannot undergo cell division after we are born? And the answer to this question is the skeletal muscle cells do not undergo cell division. We do not have an increase in the skeletal muscle cell number. What happens is that there is an increase in the number of myofibrils inside the skeletal muscle cells. And by increasing the number of myofibrils inside skeletal muscle cells get bulkier. They get thicker. And that causes the enlargement of the skeletal muscles. And this enlargement of the skeletal muscles is what we call hypertrophy. Now, what is very interesting is that when there is this increase in number of myofibrils, because the person is lifting lots of weight, is doing these resistance exercises, there is also the development of connective tissue around these skeletal muscle cells. And this all adds to the overall mass of the skeletal muscle. Now, there is a purpose for this development of connective tissue. And the purpose is to contain, to support the skeletal muscles as they can produce more and more and more powerful contractions. Now, if you have the development of connective tissue, you also have the development of stronger tendons. Because the tendon is the connective tissue layers, the endomysium, perimysium, and epimysium that merged and became this tube. So you have the tendons becoming stronger, and when the tendons become stronger, that prevents tendon damage, and the person is able to lift very heavy weights without having the tendons detaching from the bone. Now, sometimes instead of having this tube-like structure that is the tendon attaching a muscle to a bone, the epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium fuse and become a sheath of connective tissue. And this sheath of connective tissue receives the name of aponeurosis. And aponeurosis, like tendons, provide support to our muscles, such as strength and stability. So we have been talking about aponeurosis, tendons, epimysium, perimysium, endomysium. What do they have in common? They are all connective tissue, right? And have you heard of fascia? Fascia is a connective tissue sheath. And when this connective tissue sheath wraps around group of muscles, we call it deep fascia, or very specifically, we call it fascia of muscles. And fascia of muscles is made of dense, irregular connective tissue. And this sheath of dense, irregular connective tissue wrapping around group of muscles provides support and protection to the group of muscles it is surrounding.